Welcome to Urban Legends with your hosts, Smartwatch, Neil and Chris, and Lucas Speaker.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Urban Legends, the internet-based podcast like they all are, but this one's about different things than some of the others. I am honky-tonk accordion player Chris Flynn, and with me, as always, is jeweller to the great houses of Europe. It's Mr.
Neil Herbert.
Hi, Neil. How's your week been? Are you enjoying the holiday periods?
Yeah, well, it's especially busy period of the year for me, as you can imagine.
I mean, we should say that we're recording this before the holiday period, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we'll do a little bit of artifice, and then we'll talk about your jewelling. So
which in itself is incredibly true.
It is true. How did you get into the jewelling for the great houses of Europe?
Yeah, well, as a young lad, I just always, loved diamonds
Bling.
and rubies and emeralds and any kind of bling. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Couldn't get enough of shiny rocks and pebbles.
Was that because you were into hip hop when you were a kid?
Yeah, partly that.
Yeah.
Also the whole just jewellery lifestyle.
The jewellery life.
Flashing some ice, as we used to say.
You used to say in Port Slade.
Yeah.
You used to have a grill, didn't you? Of course, across your teeth.
Yeah, and the grill
top said
cubic zirconias, and
top said port, and the bottom said Slade.
Yeah,
lovely.
So damaged my teeth quite horrifically by the time.
You've got dentures now, of course.
Yeah.
Wooden teeth,
chompers. Yeah, good.
So how did you get into the jewellery making part of it from simply coveting jewellery?
I just found it was an easy way to make money. I mean, I don't actually make any of the jewels myself.
Oh, don't you?
That goes to a sweatshop.
Okay.
In an undisclosed location.
Yeah, not in the UK. Or is that not at liberty?
Not at liberty to say. Not at liberty, and legally might be in fairly precarious.
In hot water
union if I say.
Do you do the designs or anything, or is that also farmed out?
No, I don't do any of the designing. I just go onto Fiverr and someone design me some good jewellery,
right?
Or just copy things that are elsewhere. Maybe like somebody's on Etsy or something and they do something that looks good.
Yeah, which they probably copied.
Yeah, they've probably copied it anyway, haven't they?
Yeah,
so I'll just appropriate it. I think I'm very much though. I'm just kind of like remixing other people's ideas in a way that's unique to myself.
Well, there's nothing wrong with remixing, is there?
No, exactly.
It's how you make one hit record into two, I believe 50 Cent said.
It's just efficient, isn't it?
And how did you get your hook up with the great houses of Europe?
Just, a brass neck and a lot of lying. Haven't got there.
What was this?
I may or may not have pretended. So, I may or may not have pretended to be a long lost descendant of the Russian Tsars.
Oh, okay. So did you
say if you look at the resemblance
were
between me and Count Anastasia? It's uncanny, isn't it?
It is uncanny, yeah.
Uncanny at how we don't look anything alike.
Yeah, that is uncanny. Yeah, I mean, you could look more opposite. Did you?
I mean, she actually had bone structure. One's just like a hammer on a stick.
Did you claim to have trained under the great grandson of Fabergé?
Fabergé.
So is it lucrative?
You want to believe? Yeah. I mean, the most amount of money I could make for the least effort was very much how I've gone down this path.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And tying into my love of shiny things.
Yeah. So do you keep the good pieces for yourself and flog the rest to like the Swedish Royal Court or whatever?
The tat to some oligarch or some royal. They got no fucking taste anymore.
Yeah, the oligarchs, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
They're all fucking new money.
Yeah. Nouveau riche.
Ugh.
Hate them. Bring back the Tsar. That's what I'd say.
Not least because I could flog stuff to them as well. But so any kind of like any fancy houses or sort of aristocracy in the UK or kind of obviously we do have the royal warrant. Well, we're sweating on that one, you see, because obviously under
Charles is in now.
the late Her Majesty Queen, God bless her. But yeah, Charles in there. So got a couple of years more out of that one.
Dutch original
I'm hoping we're going to
jewellery.
renew and ride into the Caroline era, much as we have done in the Elizabethan one.
Are you thinking that you might just wait until he popped his clogs?
Well, you wonder, don't you, how much
Time he's got left.
You wonder how much time he's got left on the clock, hasn't he? He's had a good innings already, hasn't he? Bless him. But no, hopefully he'll be around for many years to come. But
I really, I've been watching the football. I really hate our national anthem.
Well, yeah, it's kind of crap, isn't it?
Yeah, but God save our gracious. Like, it's all about saving the most saved person in the country. Like the king or the queen, who have like
squeeze out his teeth, pays for him.
Yeah.
No effort for him.
Yeah.
And get angry about pens not being immediately available on the table or being too close to him when he doesn't want them when he's signing a document.
Someone take a look at his fingers because they're about to burst all over us.
I think individual.
I just kind of think.
But no, what you've got to understand,
Chris, is that
he's the figurehead. He's the figurehead of our amazing great nation, and as such, he's like the Fisher King, and he's his vaunted success.
Yeah,
is just a reflection of our own great,
glory,
awesome nation.
Yeah,
I can't do this with a straight face.
No,
it was written. I mean, let's face it, all these anthems were written at a different time, and I'm kind of not particularly.
I kind of like it to be rewritten to be a bit more kind of about
decent
the people.
What would you think about Jerusalem? Because a lot of people consider that. They
hate it.
Yeah, I'm not fussed. I think it's got the right tune.
I think.
And William Blake poems. Nothing wrong with a bit of Blake.
Well, Blake was one of these
British ashes casualty.
British like Jerusalemists who think that Jesus came to England and went on Glastonbury tour and stuff, and he thinks there were like these people who thought that the British Israelites, they thought that the British people were one of the lost tribes of Israel and that England was the new Jerusalem and all of this shit. And that's what the whole poem's about. And it's just how about we do a national anthem which is not about religion and it's not about the royal family. That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? It's about the 70 million people who are neither of those.
Vindaloo or 3 lines on a shirt, then, is what you're asking.
No, because they're football songs. Okay. They're not a national anthem, are they? They're very specific to a sport.
The theme tune from the Dam Busters?
Theme tune from Minder.
Actually, yeah, that
I could be so good for you.
Oh, mine just got Dennis Walton singing it. No, I'll reverse my position there.
That's a good song, though. I'll do anything for you.
Strangled cat fucking singing Dennis Walton.
Yeah, but you get someone else to sing. That'd be. Can you imagine that? That'd be great at the start.
Diana Ross singing that at Wembley Stadium or something.
Start off like do. If you want to, I'll change the situation.
Actually, it's an improvement. Do you know what? It's an improvement.
It get people going.
Tune from Bullseye. What was that?
No, that's.
Hold on, don't tell me people aren't going to get there.
Yeah, well, just something like Chaz and Dave. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Something a bit more rousing, you know, that isn't talking about saving the most covered in cotton wool person in the country.
Roll out the barrel.
That'd
be all right. It's no classic.
My old man said, follow the van.
Yeah.
And I'll clearly tell you all the way.
I'm not sure we're there, but these are all improvements. I'll definitely agree on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's be honest. Most national anthems are a bit shit, aren't they?
Song 2 by
Blur, yeah.
By Blur. Woohoo!
And I feel every melt, yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much it's sort of...
Ghost Town by the Specials.
That would be... Well, this is the weird thing about...
wouldn't it?
Well, no, it would be appropriate, but this is the weird thing about Jerusalem as well, because it's basically, I mean, that poem is... I mean, it's a lot of it as well, it's about, wanting to go back to a more pastoral society.
Yeah, which never existed.
Well, no, rural...
all of that was propaganda, which was made up to bring Britain together for the Second World War. The world was never like that.
No, it's not. I'd say it's not entirely true. You did used to have sort of a lot of
working the land.
Stuff before the mills and stuff came up.
Yeah, but you would also be a serf.
Oh yeah, and it would be a lot of feudalism as well.
Like it wasn't. I'm not
saying it was a good time, Chris. Just saying, I'm not saying I hark back to those halcyon days. I'm just, but no, what I'm saying is that Jerusalem actually is kind of like a depressing poem about harking back for a lost time in the middle of the dark satanic mills and all of this pollution and smoke and shit. Anyway, because it's a weird one to sort of sing as a triumphant sort of thing, is what I'm saying. That's a ghost town. Actually, would be quite appropriate.
Ghost town, yeah. Ghost town by the Specials, our new national anthem. I think we can.
There we go. I think I'll agree on that one.
Cool. I might start doing a honky tonk version on my accordion.
Nice.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
And we'll try and get that done for season 5.
Yeah, could do, couldn't I? Could normally pull something out of the bag. Okay, so Neil, you have often been described as a very sensual man, haven't you?
Apparently, yeah.
They call you sexual fudge, I believe, down the bingo halls.
It's one of many things they call me.
Do you know the most sensual of all of the supernatural? It's the vampire, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
And Neil, today, that's what we're going to be looking at.
The sexiest of all of the urban legends.
That was an excellent segue.
We've done vampires before, haven't we?
Have we?
I believe we've got Goebbels. Goebbels? No, it wasn't a Nazi.
Oh, the Goebbels vampire.
The Goebbels vampire, yes.
Yeah, in Glasgow.
Scotland, rather than here.
Yes, well, there's more than one vampire, Neil. I don't have to tell you that.
There's many a vampire.
So today we're going to be
got a few of them in Parliament, Chris, in my opinion. There you go, political comedy.
Oh, you wag. So today we're going to be looking at the Richmond Vampire, Virginia's tunnel hunting Nosferatu. And this is from a website we've used before called The Serpent's Pen.
Mm. It's an American vampire.
Yes. And
I imagine fairly similar to ones from the old country.
David Castleton's blog. That's what The Serpent's Pen is. And just a little bit about David Castleton, because we've used him twice now. He is a prize-winning author and blogger with a fascination for the darker side of literature and creativity.
Nice. Well, thank you for your
input, David.
David.
Yeah, thanks for that.
We'll be appropriating that shortly.
So this article is from April the 21st, 2021.
Yeah, fresh off the press is almost, well, for us.
For us, yeah. So this is quite a wordy one, so jump in whenever you want. It's another one of me reading a lot.
See what milks the juices, whatever that means.
So, in Richmond's historic Hollywood Cemetery, in addition to the graves of presidents and Pulitzer Prize winners, is an infamous mausoleum.
I'm going to just go in there immediately, because so there's a Hollywood here as well. It's not, it's not Hollywood land like in Los Angeles.
Well,
Richmond's in Virginia, isn't it? I believe.
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah,
over it. So it's in America.
So that's sort of middle America, isn't it?
Virginia, yeah. So that's like just south of Washington,
where they got that good tobacco growing.
They're smoking some gold leaf.
Virginia, I believe. Oh, there you go.
I'm having gold leaf, which is from Virginia at the moment. Mm.
Oh, is that rich and tasty, Chris?
Mm. Oh, do you know what? It feels like it's caressing my lungs. Yeah. Beautiful.
With mutagens.
Whatever. I drink a lot of green tea. I don't. I used to. I didn't even do that for whatever. So this tomb, incorporating ancient Egyptian and Masonic designs, and even marked with an insignia that looks for all the world like fangs, is the resting place of one W.W. Poole. An individual
trying to keep something in that must be contained.
Must be contained. An individual said to have been run out of England for being a vampire. The mausoleum, a notorious...
He would have been fine.
What, for being a vampire?
Yeah, he would have. He would have by now. Let's drink a bit of blood. Problem.
So, the mausoleum, a notorious gathering place for occultists and those interested in the black arts. I'm going to be doing a lot of that kind of voice.
You can be doing a lot of... Yeah, we're pulling out the old Matt Berry, let's not lie. But...
Yeah. Isn't marked with any birth or death date for Poole. There's just the year 1913 indicating when his wife died, but no such reference for Poole himself, leading to speculation of an undead vampire inhabiting a gaudy eternity. So
See that, because like the whole vampire mythos, like eternal life. Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, all right. Supposedly, be careful what you wish for, because you eventually drive mad with it.
I think I'd be all right.
I don't know. I think I'd be all right.
There's always new stuff coming out on
sleeping in a
Netflix.
coffin. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know actually. Is that?
Well,
is
do you
that
know
part
what?
of
Like,
thing?
I would.
Maybe it's just maybe that's the thing, is when you do get sick of life after, like, I don't know, 10,000 years, you just sack it off for a couple of hundred. Just get in your coffin and just go, oh, fuck it.
Yeah, see how
Like, you
things
could do
turn
that
out.
at the moment, couldn't you? You'd be like, oh, maybe I'll give it 50 years, see how we go.
Do you know what? Like, I would quite happily make the trade of having to sleep in a coffin for immortality. Like, that's a no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer.
Just get yourself a nice big comfy coffin, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
That day.
Yeah, I
Lovely dry mausoleum.
I sleep on my front as well,
Yeah.
so it'd be fine.
As a vampire, you want to invest in these things.
Well, exactly.
Preach
That's the
comforts,
thing.
isn't it?
It's like with buying a bed, and you should spend as much on a bed as you would on a holiday, because you spend a third of your life in it.
Immortality is what you make of it.
Exactly. You know, you're not going to be just in like some hard wooden coffin. I mean, if you see them in the films,
if you're 6 feet under, just sleeping in soil in a wooden thing, then you're a chump.
you're absolutely
Getting what you
idiot.
deserve, getting what you paid for.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. If you're not willing to, do you know what?
Yeah.
You might think it's expensive, but if you're investing in yourself, it's always a good investment.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Self-care, you know.
Self-care, exactly.
Sounds selfish, but you're going to be better for others as well.
Exactly. Make you
Nosferatu.
Yeah, it's like the trickle-down effect. If I'm feeling nicer, I'm less abusive to others.
Yeah, well, not really, are you?
No, but I think
If anything, it energises you to be,
yeah,
to be
I'm
more
much, I'll
corrupt
get
and
much,
awful.
yeah, I get much better sleep. I can really put my back into
really,
it. No, see, the shoulder to the wheel.
Really oppress the proles.
So, mysteriously, there's no inscription to tell anything more about Paul's life, further heightening local anxiety over the mausoleum's occupant.
And so if you were a vampire, do you think you'd be a good vampire like Blade, or would you be a bad vampire like Dracula? You could do a lot of good, couldn't you, with those powers?
Well,
it's not just immortality, but you...
I mean, you're being very simplistic, Neil. Life isn't black and white. It's shades of grey, isn't it?
Well,
So
I don't know. Then like a shitty vampire like Morbius. I don't know.
I don't. I don't. I think
I've noticed Jared Leto ever done anything.
The only thing about being a vampire would be the difficulty of getting human blood to feed on without having to kill. So, yes, you break into blood banks or whatever, or have some kind of donation scheme amongst friends.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't want to kill people, would you?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Live long enough to get over it.
Yeah, yeah,
A few people I wouldn't mind sucking dry, to be honest with you.
Ooh, saucy. Back to the story. This perplexing and ominous tomb isn't the only aspect of what is known as the Richmond Vampire legend. Not far from the graveyard is an old railway tunnel that has long been seen as unlucky or cursed. The Churchill Tunnel, built in the early 1870s, was notoriously prone to flooding, cave-ins and subsidence problems so severe... Built it properly, exactly.
Musk had built that, that'd be still standing.
Well, that's what happens when you hire Irish navvies, isn't it?
Pay them right. Well, they don't care, are they?
No, exactly. Problems so severe that they led to rumours that the Richmond Vampire liked to skulk down there, with the evil around the creature generating many of these mishaps. Because, as we know, evil is what generates subsidence.
Yeah. He's just, he's a bit of a shit vampire so far, isn't he? So he haunts a train tunnel and it causes subsidence.
Causes black moles.
Yeah. I'm going to buy up a load of property.
Didn't have dehumidifiers back then.
Well, you'd have put up with it in those days, wouldn't you?
You need a werewolf because they actually act as natural dehumidifiers.
Well, they do. They absorb mould through the pores of their fur.
That's exactly it.
Pores of their fur, okay.
Yep, their pores and their fur.
Pores and their fur, yeah.
So, on the 2nd of October, 1925, a disastrous cave-in occurred, with tons of rocks and soil crashing down on a work train, killing, trapping and wounding several labourers. Just
They find them all completely drained of blood.
Doesn't say. Shortly after the
Suspicious.
Shortly after the catastrophe, eyewitnesses saw a horrific creature running from the tunnel's end with fang-like teeth and rolls of decomposing flesh hanging from its body.
Okay.
The creature is said
Not
to
a sexy vampire, then?
Not a sexy one, no.
He wasn't sparkling in the sun or anything?
No, he wasn't smouldering.
But he's out and about in the daytime, so he's not a vampire that can only go about by night.
No, he's a day vampire.
He's a day walker.
Day walker, yeah. The creature is said to have sprinted into Richmond's Hollywood Cemetery and disappeared into the mausoleum of W.W. Poole. So we've got some witnesses now. This is hotting up.
I like W.W. Poole as well.
But is this really what happened during the Churchill Tunnel collapse? Who might the vampire who dashed from the tunnel have been? What do we know about the life of W.W. Poole before his entombment, and how might vampire stories have become attached to him? And what are the reports of occultists and Satanists gathering around the mausoleum? Let's begin by examining the strange legend of the Churchill Tunnel disaster.
Is that the one we just referred to?
Yes.
Okay.
So now he's gonna forensically go through it.
He's just cleared it up, so the jury will have absolutely no option but to convict at the end of this.
Yeah.
Stirring peroration.
Yeah, but what is it they say? If the rolls of decomposing flesh fit, you have to acquit. Yeah.
Well, I think you're making a lot of assumptions here just because he had fangs and decomposing flesh that he's a vampire, but fair enough.
Very judgmental. Mausoleum.
Yes, I like hanging out in graves.
It could just be a goth.
It's just Tim Burton, isn't it?
Yeah. So
indulging in one of his hobbies.
So the Churchill Tunnel was built by the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad Companies in 1873. The 1,200-metre, 4,000-foot tunnel is one of the longest in the US, burrowed 4,000 feet under the Richmond Churchill district, and was assailed by problems from the start. Richmond's soft blue marl clay has a tendency to shrink and then swell in response to fluctuations in rainfall and groundwater, a fact which, during the tunnel's construction, led to multiple cave-ins and 10 worker deaths. Brilliant. It's like, like building a stadium in Qatar, isn't it?
I note that there's absolutely nothing to do with vampires here, though. It just looks like a kind of place where it wasn't particularly safe to build a tunnel.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, kind of, we've started now.
But might as well
carry on.
Sunk cost, isn't it?
The tunnel remained so troublesome throughout its working life, with water seepages, safety worries, and a tendency to call buildings on Churchill to tilt and kink, that in 1890s a decision was made to replace it with a 3-mile double-track railroad viaduct. The viaduct, which extended along the James River, easing past Hollywood Cemetery, downtown Richmond and Churchill, was completed in 1901, and in 1902 the tunnel closed. So it was only around for 30 years. The Churchill Tunnel, which soon grew dilapidated, stayed shut for over 20 years. But by the 1920s, with Richmond's population and economy expanding, the C&O realised they needed the extra railway capacity. So in 1925...
Let's reopen that crappy tunnel.
Yeah, the company decided to restore and enlarge the unlucky tunnel. Well, might as well
unlucky, more structurally unsound.
Structurally unsound tunnel. They hadn't done a proper sort of surveying on before building. Though every engineering firm consulted thought such a plan to be harebrained.
It's unlucky. It's not consult with the experts and they tell us, what, you fucking stupid.
It's made of clay.
Clay. Got a fucking tunnel there. C&O's tip you off.
C&O's own technicians approved the tunnel as safe and works commenced.
How about if we pay you double time? It's safe now. Wink, wink. Yes, sir.
Christmas bonuses are just around the corner. That's... A series of minor cave-ins, however, took the lives of 12 workers.
Yeah.
On October
clearly a vampire.
On October the 2nd, 1925, a work train of around 200 workmen were in a tunnel about 160 yards from its western end. Their job was to clear dirt by loading it into the steam train's flat cars. As the crew laboured away, a brick fell from the tunnel ceiling, slamming into one of the train's 10 wagons. The workmen knew this was an ominous signal, and sure enough, more bricks crashed down, several electrical cables cutting the lights and plummeting the tunnel into darkness. "Watch out, Tom, she's a-coming," Benjamin Cusby, the train's burly 28-year-old fireman, shouted to his engineer. Panic buzzed through the black tunnel and workers began swarming towards the exits, stumbling and tripping over railway sleepers and each other, convinced Mosby's prediction would soon prove to be accurate. In the mayhem, according to certain accounts, some workers pulled out their knives, slashing desperately at anyone who got in their way. That's good, isn't it? Got real team spirit.
Good orderly safety procedures here.
You've lost the dressing room.
This is why you want to get rid of all this, elfin safety and red tape, Chris. Let people use their initiative.
Yeah, let them bring Bowie knives in.
Stab their way out.
Stab their way
if anything, just get them all armed with, automatic rifles.
Yeah, chainsaws.
A little quicker.
Yeah, make it like Day of the Dead or something.
Rockets.
Suddenly, a whole section of the tunnel collapsed, 190 feet worth of soil plunging towards the crew, triggering an immense cave-in that spread along most of the tunnel's length, buckling roads and swaying buildings on the surface. Most of the workmen died.
Nobody could have seen that happening.
No one could have predicted
that's
this.
A combination of bad luck and vampirism, clearly. Nobody could have predicted
Evil vampirism, yeah.
Play harder next time, people, if you don't want this to happen.
Most of the workmen dived under the train's flat cars and, crawling beneath them, managed to get out of the tunnel's eastern end. That's good thinking.
Yeah.
Shop labourers poured from the entrance.
Should I stab my teammates or take shelter?
Take shelter and crawl along where it's safe. Shop labourers poured from the entrance, hobbling with injuries, smeared with dirt and blood, gashed with cuts, and gouged with wounds. Then, from amongst this throng of disoriented workers, they're alleged to have appeared the most horrendous sight.
There's a lot of alleged and supposedlys, and
there always is.
Yeah,
it hasn't been to court yet. Alleged has to be said. Like even when someone, even on the news, they say the alleged victim, don't they?
Yeah.
So
they're so scared of the vampire lobby these days. Can't say anything, can you?
Really, really powerful.
Can't say anything about vampires these days. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So, a creature staggered.
They're all good and sparkly. Not my experience.
Well, the vampires rule Hollywood, don't they?
Yeah. Big Hollywood might want to lie to your listeners, but that's not on my watch. They're rotten flesh, buck-teeth motherfuckers.
Yeah, cause subsidence. A creature staggered into view, spattered with gore and streaked with blood. This entity seemed partially decomposed, with rolls of skin hanging from its naked, muscular torso and swollen arms.
It's the fat controller, that little shape thing.
Fresh blood smeared the creature's cheeks, neck, and mouth, a mouth which hung open to reveal jagged, fang-like teeth. Unlike the terrified men around it, the creature showed no indication of shock or concern. Accounts claim the ghoul then dashed in the direction of nearby Hollywood Cemetery. A group of men chased it, but couldn't catch the fleet-footed monster.
So hang on, how are they? They're all in this dark tunnel, so how they see it?
What are you talking? You're not listening. They're all out of the tunnel now. They've all come out.
Spotted him on the other side of the tunnel.
He's come out of the tunnel after them.
Ah, okay. And then gone and run up to the cemetery.
Yeah.
So he's causing cabins.
They did, however, pursue the creature closely enough to see it disappear into a mausoleum, that of the infamous W.W. Poole.
Again, I'm putting this very much on. They're all getting bribed to say that was. Come on, lads. Clearly, this is malfeasance. You're gonna have to. No, it was vampire.
Yeah.
It
was a vampire. So we all saw him. We chased him.
How could you explain this? It was vampire. Really? Where did he go though?
Stick to the story, lads. Stick to the story. Yeah. If we all say
it, getting paid.
Some say the pursuers then tried to enter the tomb, but accounts disagree concerning what happened next. One version of the legend has the men jimmying open the door just in time to see a coffin lid closing.
You can't reopen it, can you?
Can't reopen it. It's held down by Hellspawn. Another story insists they found the tomb locked from within, and despite their numbers and strength, were unable to open it. Yet another
like a demonic force was keeping it held shut.
Wow. Yet another tale states the vampire screamed curses from inside the mausoleum, presumably so petrifying they caused the men to back off. Get out of there! I'll stab you up! Go away!
He's quite a cowardly vampire, isn't he? He's doing a lot of running away from it.
Well, no. He's done his cave-in. Presumably had a bit of a nibble on some.
Well, he had a bit of blood drinking in there. He's just a bit more surreptitious, Yeah,
and then he got back in there where he knew he was safe. I mean, a vampire...
He's had 20-odd years. He's not been able to get any blood. And he's like, they start using the tunnel again. Brilliant. They do some more cave-ins.
Well, we don't know what he was up to in the in-between times, do we? We don't know. Huh? Who's just cracking one out
Vampires
for 20 years.
take a very long time.
Yeah, it's like super edging.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, when you've lived 5,000 years, Chris, you're gonna,
Yeah, you can take. You can really take your time. Like Sting.
The tantric vampire wank.
So, ominously, the description of the entity, with folds of skin hanging from its partially decaying flesh, would be consistent with the decomposition expected of a body treated with the burial practices of the time, time after about 2 to 5 years.
What, as it would have been rotting after they buried it?
Yeah, so that's like, it would probably look like that after 2 to 5 years.
Okay.
But Neil, get your nut around this. Paul had been placed in the mausoleum 3 years previously. So it's consistent. CSI.
Bullshit. Sounds more like a zombie to me, apart from the fangs. Zombies don't cause cave-ins, though, do they? Or do they? We don't know.
No, zombies cause earthquakes. Some also say that, as the vampire emerged from the tunnel, he muttered something about his wife, and it's known that Paul shared his mausoleum with his spouse.
So is she like a bride of Dracula, or...
Well, we don't know.
Was
she a
normal... We
normal...
simply don't know.
I mean, it could be that, he
may have been mortal.
He fell in love with Immortal.
Maybe it's like...
And that kept him off the vampiring.
The movie from the 90s where, he was just like, he was a righteous man, but then when his wife died, his beloved wife, he then turned to Satan and...
Yeah, well, I can understand that.
Became a vampire.
Like, it's understandable, isn't it?
Yeah,
All I'm saying is it'd be nice to have the option now.
Yeah.
So, such narratives, unsurprisingly, have led to the notion that Richmond Vampire was involved in the Churchill Tunnel disaster. Some believe the vampire, angry at the disruption the engineering works were causing to his underground hangouts, caused the tunnel's collapse.
So it's just a limby vampire then, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite a tedious chat, this vampire.
I don't know. I think you're giving him a hard time, man.
I don't know.
I think you're giving him a hard time. You're not big on vampires, are you, apparently? That's what I'm getting so far.
I think I'm a bit of a traditionalist on vampires. I want them being
in Eastern Europe.
Castles in Eastern Europe.
Well,
blood and just
time moves on, Farage.
Some the classics are the classics for a reason, Chris.
He then gorged himself on the bodies of the dead and injured workers, tearing and sucking with his fangs, hence the blood his mouth was smeared with, before fleeing the hazardous tunnel and hot-footing it back to his tomb. But what really happened during the Churchill Tunnel catastrophe? Was the apparition seen staggering from the entrance really the Richmond Vampire? Read on and we'll find out.
Oh.
So now this is more your speed. A more sober look at the evidence. Oh, here we go. Got a little semi on, have you?
Wow.
Good. Shows. Got a little chub on. Little chub. So, a more sober look at the evidence shows the vampire's appearance during the Churchill Tunnel disaster in quite a different light. Just before the cave-in, fireman Benjamin Mosby had been shoveling coal into the engineer's furnace. It was common for the firemen engaged in such tasks, due to their intense labour and the fire's heat, to work without a shirt. Oh,
Yep.
getting hot in here.
Oh, it's like the Pepsi, whatever. Was it a Diet Coke, lad? I don't know.
Diet Coke break.
Oh.
Fireman break. When the tunnel collapsed, it caused the train's steam tank to explode. Mosby was struck with a tsunami of steam and scalding water, making his skin peel off in rolls, while the force of the explosion, flinging him back, inflicted further injuries and smashed his teeth. Mosby, however, managed to escape the engine, crawl beneath the train, and stumble out the tunnel. When he staggered from the entrance, it seemed the severe shock he was in made him strangely calm. He asked that his wife to be contacted and told he was alive and not to worry. Mosby then collapsed. Workers laid him on a nearby embankment and poured water over him in an attempt to soothe his terrible pain. Bystanders noted that swathes of his blistered skin had fallen away in flaps measuring up to 4 inches in width. Ooh, pretty horrendous. And that he also had lacerations from crawling under the train and several broken teeth. Not
only are the tunnels they're building like really fucking chunky, the trains are exploding. They're going through them as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, no expense used.
Yeah. That's all down to vampires, surely.
Mosby was assured his message would be relayed to his wife. A taxi took him to Grace Hospital, where he died within 24 hours. Interestingly, Mosby was laid to rest in Hollywood Cemetery, though it was certainly not in W.W. Paul's mausoleum. Among Richmond's working men at the time, apparently, a slang term for dying was "going to Hollywood," referring to the city's famous necropolis.
I like that. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
They're going to get the pictures, boy.
The pictures on the great beyond. So Mosby wasn't the only fatality in the Churchill Tunnel cave in court, though Mosby's was the only man who made it out of the tunnel to have died. Others weren't able to escape. The duty roster listed 3 men, including the train engineer, one Thomas Joseph Mason, all missing. In an attempt to find any lingering survivors or recover bodies, C&O dug down from the surface, getting to the train 8 days after the collapse. Well, you're not going to get any survivors then, are you, unless they've got water?
You don't know. You can survive for
3 days without water.
Yeah.
But this is 8 days.
There might have been some, I don't know.
That's why I said unless they had water.
Yeah.
I did cover myself, don't worry.
All right.
They reached Mason's cabin. His corpse was found upright in his chair, pinned in place by the engine's reverse lever. At that point, the company chose not to go on with the rescue effort, citing the cost. $30,000 in today's modern money. So not very much.
Well, if we want to spend that sort of money, we could have, shored up this tunnel or actually got non-exploding boilers. We've installed a boiler with a valve on it.
Yeah, we would have got someone to actually do some sort of geological survey to make sure that we weren't just going into clay. And the fact the rescue attempt triggered more cave-ins. The decisions may also have been influenced by the fact that the 2 other missing men, Richard Lewis and H. Smith, were African-American casual labourers. Wow. There may well have been more itinerant workers. Some have speculated as many as 6 trapped in Churchill's tunnel, as a record keeping of such people in those days could be scanty. Whoever was left was destined to be entombed in there, along with the locomotive and its 10 flat cars. In spring 1926, the Virginia State Corporation Commission, which regulated the state railways, ordered the tunnel's western entrance sealed for safety reasons. It's been bricked up.
Right. You're just going to create a vampire habitat there. That's what you're going to do.
Well, exactly. Or a rat man.
Yeah.
So it seems that part of the Richmond Vampire legend centred on the Churchill Tunnel was based on the death of Benjamin Mosby. The skin hanging from the body, the blood, the fangs, and even the vampire's apparent calm and utterance about his wife all charmed with Mr. Mosby's horrendous experience. Though the newspaper reports of the accident at the time seemed to have been factual, the taxi that took Mosby to hospital had just carried a journalist to the scene. It is likely that over the years, memories of the incident became distorted into something more sinister. In fact, Mosby was buried in Hollywood Cemetery, and the workers' slang phrase, going to Hollywood, might have later fed into an evolving belief linking the vampire that emerged from the tunnel with that of the graveyard. The vampire's dash for the necropolis may have been a garbled retelling of some accounts that claim Mosby at one point tried to run towards the James River. But what of the myth's other component, Neil? W.W. Poole, his alleged vampirism, and his creepy mausoleum in Hollywood Cemetery. Let's see what we can find out about the elusive character. So, I mean, that sounds like a horrible way to go.
That's awful, yeah. I mean, 4-inch wide, Christ. Yeah.
I'm glad that we don't, well, I was going to say we live in times where that doesn't happen, but it does happen, but just not in this country, yeah.
Not a job I'd want to do, you know.
I'm glad that I don't do manual labour.
But puts into perspective me whining about my office job.
Yes. So, was W.W. Poole the Richmond Vampire?
Tell you what though, Chris, this RSI. My fingers get a bit sore sometimes.
Do they? And you get quite a bad back sometimes from sitting in your chair quite a lot, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Well, so I think Mosby got it easy.
I think you got it, yeah.
Sore ass.
It's got over with quick.
Eyes get a bit tired.
Yeah. That's strange.
Sometimes when I've got my my work headphones on, my ears get a little bit sweaty.
Oh yeah, I bet you get uncomfortably warm.
Or
maybe a little bit pinched as well.
Difficult times. So, legend states that W.W. Poole was run out of England for vampirism. But it appears Poole was born in Mississippi around 1847.
Blame the limeys.
Yeah, typical, isn't it? Come on, guys. The Revolutionary War was ages ago. Get over it.
Look, I'm sorry we burnt down the White House in 1815. Soz about that. But, you know, we're all friends now, yeah?
Well, you shouldn't have been murdering up the native people. You know, now that we could.
In Canada and all that.
Yeah. So, William Wortham Poole was the son of Samuel Poole, a merchant, and by 1860, William was employed as a clerk in the state capital, Jackson, Mississippi. Later, in the 1860s, Poole moved to Virginia, working as a clerk in a tobacco factory in the Richmond suburb of Manchester. Then, as a bookkeeper and a private secretary. He became a well-established Richmond accountant, often working for the influential Bryans, a family of newspaper publishers. Poole married his wife Alice in 1866, and they had 4 children. His wife passed away in 1913, but Poole lived on to the age of 75, dying of pneumonia in February 1922. The only mildly spooky incident connected with Poole's death was the fact that his close friend, one Samuel Owens, died on the same day of a broken heart.
Yeah, coincidence, isn't it?
Owens, Manchester's Commission of Revenue, had, along with Poole, been a prominent member of Richmond Central Methodist Church and had attended the same Freemasons Lodge. The thing is, as well, pneumonia is actually a viral disease. Yeah, so if they were hanging out, it's contagious. If your immune system's fucked, then that's how you get it.
They're probably practicing kissing on each other.
Practicing kissing?
Yeah.
For if they get new wives.
That's my theory, yeah.
It's not gay, we're just practicing kissing for the women's. It's all right. Active in the civic affairs, Poole appears to have been a person of some local influence in his later life. Shortly after his death, he was described as one of the oldest and most widely known residents of South Richmond. So, how did the outlandish Richmond vampire legend come to weave itself around W.W. Poole, a man who appears to have led an exceptionally normal and respectable, if moderately successful
Absolutely
life?
Nothing vampiric thus far.
It's possible, Neil, that the seeds...
It's possible. That Jesus was a vampire. And he did rise from the dead, so there's a lot more evidence there.
That the seeds of some of the rumours were planted thanks to the elaborate funerals of Poole and Owens, funerals which included full Masonic rites. The Richmond News leader reported, "Today is a virtual holiday in this section of the city, owing to the funeral services of W.W. Poole and Samuel R. Owens, 2 of the most distinguished citizens of Southside. Representatives from practically all of the public offices, hustings courts, and banks, and persons from all walks of life attended the funeral of Mr. Poole this morning, and the same large crowd will pay their last tribute of respect to Mr. Owens this afternoon. Most of the vampire hysteria around Poole is, however, likely to come from his tomb. The mausoleum's only inscriptions are the name W.W. Poole and the year 1913. There was a biblical quote, Isaiah 11:6, ending with the phrase, "And a little child shall lead them." But the slab bearing this inscription fell off a few years ago. Weren't very good, masons.
Well, they were good at building tunnels. They weren't very good at... Pretty much everything in this community seems to just fall apart.
Yeah.
Maybe getting some outside engineers, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. That costs money, don't they?
That's true, yeah.
So there's been speculation that the W's resemble fangs, that a lack of the clear birth and death date suggests that Poole is immortal, and that the child referred to in the Isaiah quote is either a small vampire or one of the children of the night.
That is a fucking stretch.
It is a stretch. All of this is quite a stretch.
W's looking like fangs is stupid enough. But it was a child. Well, it was a child vampire, yeah.
A child of the night.
What?
Anyone with a little historical knowledge could explain such things away. Tombs of the time,
half a brain could explain such things away. Tombs
of the time often lacked birth and death dates, elaborate inscription, or even names. Part of the sense of thriftiness Poole's generation was known for. Unnecessary words would mean paying the stonemasons extra.
Yeah. You'll only fall apart in a few years anyway.
Exactly, they're not very good masons around here. I'm not going to pay you. It's just going to fall off. Poole had the tomb constructed for his wife, hence it being chiseled with the year of her death, and seems to have left no instructions to add any more engravings when he was placed within. The Isaiah quote was likely just inspired by Poole's Methodist beliefs, and the observations that W resemble fangs is just too silly to have much comment expanded upon it.
Well, I didn't need to be told any of that, but fair enough. Thank you for debunking that for me. Great work. I was really scratching my head at how W couldn't possibly be a vampire.
There is, however, perhaps something eerie about Poole's mausoleum with its neo-Egyptian design. So it is
just an eclectic taste.
Well, it's like a pyramid, like the mausoleum.
Yeah, well, yeah, but there's lots of things that are like pyramids. Are they claiming that the
it's an upside down fang? It's a 3D upside down fang.
Vampires.
So there is, though, perhaps something eerie about Poole's mausoleum with its neo-Egyptian design, something that makes it stand out in the cemetery where the more conspicuous tombs tend to have Greco-Roman influences. Nods to ancient Egypt do make people think of things spooky, mummified and magical, and questing for immortality. The presence of a large pyramid unconnected to Poole in the centre of Hollywood Cemetery has likely added to the mysterious ambience. The Egyptian design of Poole's tomb was probably inspired by nothing more than widespread interest in ancient Egyptian archaeological finds in the 19th and early 20th century. An interest perhaps made more intense by Poole's case by his Masonic leanings, because the Masonics use the
pyramid symbol, the eye in the pyramid, yeah.
As you know, being Mason adjacent. One intriguing legend of the Poole Mausoleum has generated, however, is the signatures on the two tombs' land records. First inscribed by Poole, then others, are all in exactly the same handwriting. But when might the legends around W.W. Poole's tomb have arisen? What factors may have influenced them? And what of the sinister reports of occultists and Satanists congregating around Poole's resting place? Let's investigate below.
He's drawing the shit out, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, there's not too much left, don't worry. So, spooky historic cemeteries do have a tendency to generate vampire legends. A famous outbreak of vampire hysteria occurred around London's Highgate Cemetery in the 1970s, while in the 1950s hundreds of youngsters invaded Glasgow's southern Acropolis searching for the child-eating vampire.
Oh, yes.
We've done that, Goebbels' Vampire, a two-parter from Series 1, who'd apparently taken up residence there. It's also interesting that the Richmond Vampire legend is linked to the dangerous working conditions of the Churchill Tunnel. Hazardous and unpleasant working environments can give rise to a strange brand of industrial folklore. Glasgow Vampire Rumpus was connected with the steelworks at Spartan Smoke just behind the necropolis, and tough conditions at Pittsburgh steel mills helped create the myth of Joe Magarak, a giant superhuman steelworker who stirred vats of molten metal with his hands and rescued workers from industrial accidents. Might have to look at him.
Good.
But with regards to the Richmond Vampire, perhaps an institution lying close to Hollywood Cemetery was responsible for much of the legend's fame. The graveyard is adjacent to the Virginia Commonwealth University, and the idea a vampire slept in the necropolis seems to have spread amongst the students in the 1950s and 60s. Yes, students in it.
Whoa.
Crazy kids.
Bunch of hippies.
Stories circulated of strange occurrences in the cemetery, especially after nighttime adventures spent sneaking in the graveyard. Such stories were likely fueled by that period's vogue for horror films and the appearance of various kinds of undead creatures on late-night TV. Many who were young students in the 1960s would have grown up watching 1950s vampire movies. As the 60s wore on, the overactive imaginations of some of the undergraduates may have also been enhanced by the psychedelics wildly used.
Drugging. And that rock and roll music.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix.
Probably playing Dungeons and Dragons as well.
Was that around in the 60s?
No.
Nah, doesn't matter. Playing Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Doesn't matter.
Don't really matter. The Richmond Vampire myth established, it seems to have been handed down to new students over the decades. The tendencies of the VCU students to creep into Hollywood Cemetery to visit the tomb of W.W. Poole may reflect a phenomenon known as legend tripping.
That's what I want to do. I want to do some shrooms and then go into a graveyard. Brilliant.
Legend tripping is a kind of rite of passage in which usually young people visit a site associated with supernatural or traumatic events. Such sites may include tunnels, haunted houses, the location of accidents, and most commonly graveyards. I've never heard of legend tripping before, have you?
No, I haven't. This is the sort of thing kids get up to.
Yeah.
It's stupid, aren't they?
These visits give youngsters a chance to prove their courage in front of their friends, to gain a sense of adventure and feel they are, at least temporarily, flouting adult rules and norms. A widespread example of legend tripping in the United States centers on graveyard seats and benches. Legends claim those sitting on the devil's chair at certain times, such as midnight or Halloween, will invite death or curses upon themselves, or even get to see or speak to the evil one. In the case of the Richmond Vampire, it's easy to see how excitable students, minds swarming with horror movie images and perhaps buzzing with LSD, might have enhanced, popularized, or even invented the myth. It's possible that the legend of the Richmond Vampire were around before VCU students became obsessed with the creature, but the first known mention in print of the Richmond Vampire story doesn't appear until 1976 in the VCU's Commonwealth Times newspaper. But what, may we ask, of the component of the legend dealing with the Churchill Tunnel collapse? The collapse occurred in 1925, so even though the vampire was just the unfortunate Benjamin Mosby, wouldn't this give the Richmond Vampire legend an earlier origin? Some argue, however, that the tales of the Churchill Tunnel disaster and the vampiric W.W. Poole were not combined until quite recently.
Well, there you go.
It's a recent one, isn't it? The first known text that will weave together of these two narratives didn't appear until 2001 online. Since then, numerous articles and blog posts have combined the two stories, and their amalgamation received a boost in 2007 when the publication of the book Haunted Richmond, The Shadow of Shoko. This book is the first known example of the meshing of these two stories in print. It is, of course, possible that oral folklore had merged the two narratives earlier, but there's no firm evidence this was the case.
Doesn't sound likely to me.
It's a cut and shunt job, isn't it?
Yeah. Put together a couple of uninteresting myths, and
it's got the front of
together into an uninteresting myth.
It's got the front of a VW Beetle and the back of a Ford pickup. Whatever the roots of the Richmond Vampire legend, the myth certainly inflamed the public imagination. Hollywood Cemetery staff reported that kids and tourists appear regularly at their offices, asking earnestly if there's a vampire in the graveyard. More disturbingly, there have been accounts of occult activity around W.W. Poole's mausoleum. In the 1980s, the tomb door was prized open and occultist words and symbols were scrawled on the walls. Fetishes are frequently left by the mausoleum gates. Hollywood Cemetery official even took the decision to move the remains of Poole and his wife from the tomb as people were allegedly stealing parts of their bodies.
Sake. I mean, it's having a bit of fun and it's taking it too far, isn't it?
Exactly. When the fun stops, stop.
When you're picking apart 100-year-old corpses, have a word with yourself.
Yeah, stop playing Dungeons and Dragons. Others, though, doubt that serious Satanists and occultists have been congregating at Poole's mausoleum. The Richmond Paranormal Investigation Group, the Night Shift, wrote...
What should we call ourselves, lads?
Night Shift.
I like it.
Oh, that's great. Well, and do you know what? Like, that's amazing.
Badges yet? Of course.
Yeah,
and T-shirts.
It's amazing that the first idea is the best normally. So they wrote, the story of occultists visiting the crypt every Halloween is not likely. The cemetery in Richmond, Virginia is known to have a better than common security staff. If they visited on any kind of timetable, they would most certainly have been apprehended. Our experience with the occult group indicates that they rely heavily on ritual. This casts doubts on the theory of randomized visits, making it more likely a target of young college students, proving their nocturnal machismo to their friends. Ugh. College students may even be to blame for the theft of bits of Poole's body. In 1976, Commonwealth Times article stated, Mr. Poole is an alleged vampire. There seems to be a cult in Richmond that have grown up around him. I find this strange since I've heard that it used to be the in thing around medical students to break in and steal part of his remains. Fucking medical students. They're so macabre.
Sure.
Nearly there, Neil. So it
seems it's a long one this week.
Yeah, I know. So it seems that Poole's now dilapidated mausoleum never housed vampire, that it no longer even houses Poole's corpse, and Satanists drawn to the tomb may have been simply overexcited college students.
I thought there was a genuine satanic conspiracy going on here.
Hollywood Cemetery is still, however, worth a visit. Its 130 bucolic tree-filled acres contain the tomb of 2 U.S. presidents, James Monroe and John Tyler, as well as the grave of Confederacy President Jefferson Davis. My man.
E.T.
There's also the resting place of a teacher of Edgar Allan Poe, who hailed from Richmond, as well as the tomb of a couple of Pulitzer Prize winners. A 90-foot stone pyramid commemorates over 18,000 Confederate soldiers buried at the cemetery, but anyone searching for a genuinely spooky experience in connection with the Richmond Vampire legend might be advised to stray closer, but not too close, to the old Churchill Tunnel. The tunnel's western entrance, plugged with concrete, stands close to the corner of 18th and Marshall Street, though the eastern end is theoretically accessible. It's in a state of dangerous disrepair, surrounded by a small swampy jungle. In the eastern mouth beckons ominously near the intersection of E. Franklin Street and North 31st. Over the years, more portions of the tunnel have collapsed, with one of the largest cave-ins causing mayhem above, demolishing several houses, and the church wall keeps on giving. Dips can be discerned in some streets that cross the tunnel's path. The parts of the tunnel that haven't caved in contain high water levels and a gritty, quicksand-like silt, making exploration hazardous. I'm basically thinking, don't go in it. That would be my advice.
Put the silt back into the tunnel and block it up and don't use it again, frankly.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be...
It's a bad idea.
It needs to be sorted out so the buildings stop collapsing, doesn't it? And then just ignore it. So in June 2006, the Virginia Historical Society and other organisations, including the History Channel, announced an intention to recover the train. Yes, to get out again. which they plan to preserve, as well as any body the tunnel held. They were, however, forced to put this project off until a way could be found to shore up the tunnel against further collapse, which I think should probably be the priority.
You would think that would be a bigger priority than getting a train out so we could put it in a
History Channel. Yeah. We've got only 2 days. Get the diggers. There were
This is
also
a precious artifact, and it's vaguely related to a vampire that didn't exist.
There were also the possibility that disturbing the Richmond Vampire's old lair could lead to houses on Church Hill being swallowed up by enormous sinkholes. Yes, I think that is what you should be worrying about. Whether or not this tunnel is ever opened again, people walking near it have claimed to hear disturbing noises, digging sounds, screams of get me out, and even the screech of
It's just people disappearing into the sinkholes.
Yeah, that's
I mean, what I'm hearing here is don't fucking buy land in Richmond, Virginia, is what I'm hearing.
Well, not if you want to build underground.
Or live without collapsing into your basement suddenly.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's only doing that because there's a tunnel there. I don't.
Well,
think...
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, well, I don't think
don't
tunnel.
Live near the tunnel. Certainly.
Yeah, don't buy land.
But I don't know what other
tunnel.
kind of construction shenanigans and tunnels have been going on in Richmond, Virginia.
Who knows now?
And after this taste, Chris, I don't care to find out.
No, the taste was bitter, and I'll be going back to...
I shan't be,
I'll be going back to the
sweet burgers of Richmond, Virginia.
The sweet Flint and chalk bedrock. The sweet chalk and Flint, which we currently live on. I'll stick to that. Thank you very much.
Makes our water so lovely and chalky.
Well, it's not too bad. It's not too bad in Brighton because we get our water from a spring in Patcham, which isn't too chalky. But when I lived in Seaford, it was. I looked at the amount. I went because the water was horrible. It was like almost soapy, and I looked, and it was like the maximum amount of soft water that you were legally allowed to have. So you just never didn't drink water out the tap very much. It's horrible. So Neil, that's it. That was quite a short story, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was.
Didn't have to go on a bit.
It was short in terms of
short and sweet
point. Yeah. Well.
Hey Neil, look. After last week's one, which was a one-paragraph story, we've gone the other direction this week.
We'll just, we'll hit that sweet spot one of these days. Yeah, well, I mean, so a guy died in a train accident. Some people didn't know how to build a tunnel, and a vampire definitely didn't exist. They
seem to be it. So, Neil, let's go through our scoring system.
Nice.
Spookiness, Neil.
Okay. Industrial accidents are kind of terrifying. The fact that they'd rather sit around and talk about vampirism is kind of terrifying rather than actually deal with the source of the trouble. No, I mean, in terms of the actual sort of legend, it's... I don't know whether the fact that it's the kind of vampire that likes to cause cave-ins makes it more spooky or less. It's not a part of the mythos I ever thought I'd be engaging in. I mean, I don't know. So a vampire that likes to cause industrial accidents to feed on the blood. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that's kind of
it up a notch,
moving with the times, isn't it?
Yeah. So I suppose. I mean, I don't think too many people. Yeah, it's kind of. Yeah. Vampires, I don't find inherently all that scary, but yeah, this is one it's a bit more kind of like. A bit more bestial, this one in nature, isn't it? And so, and it's caused industrial accidents. I'll give it a 6.
6.
Kind of spooky, I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah, the industrial accident side of it and everything is pretty spooky.
This vampire's run out of fucks to give.
The thing is, though, it's the vampire. Like, it all seems to have been based on this one event. It's not like we saw the vampire here, and there's also stuff about. Like how we think that these people died because of vampirism or anything. It seems to be just this one thing. It's like one event.
Half the town's gone missing in a load of accidents.
So, I mean, that brings it down a bit for me. The mausoleum's it's interesting, and I guess it could be quite spooky because it's so unlike everything else around there, which is kind of the classic neo-Roman stuff with columns and that, and this one's like a big brick pyramid. I don't know.
I think tacky, if anything.
No, it looks all right.
That's it. Oh, fair enough.
I think that for me, it's all really based around kind of the horrors of industrial labour in the turn of the century is where the spookiness comes from, because the vampire ain't got a lot going on. So I think I'm going to go 4-0.
Fair enough.
Believability. So the tunnel collapse and all that happened. The people who were saying, the vampire came out, it was unfortunately that fireman who got Mosley or whatever, who got terribly injured. So all of that's real. The tomb's real. So there's stuff there that's real. But Vampire, I'm just not seeing any. I'm not seeing anything there at all. So, and I think it's just something. It's a bit of bullshit which college students tell each other as part of hazing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, you have to go in there. Do you know what I mean? Like, to sort of kids who are like 18 and it's their first time away from home. They're like, getting them to do, bullying them into doing spooky stuff, like to prove themselves.
Vampire live there.
Toxic masculinity at its height, Neil.
Yeah.
So there's I mean, well, some stuff did happen, definitely, which is part of the story. So that will give it some points. But I'm going to go. But there's no vampire, and it's been explained why there isn't. Like, it was just this guy. Yeah. I'm going to give it a 3-0.
Yeah, it's going to be low for me because, yes, a bunch of stuff happened, but it was unrelated, and there's nothing to tie it into vampirism. Yeah, so I suppose the only part that you can talk about in terms of belief, so did it happen? No, some things did happen, but they were quite easily explainable things. W's on a tomb by somebody named W in their name. I mean, that must be vampire fans. Well, no, it's a letter that we're all quite familiar with. For example, one of the best ones. So yeah, the stuff that's there that is true is just is unrelated, really. I suppose the only thing for me is you say, how much do these college students actually believe in some of this stuff? And I think it's going to be marginal there anyway, so I'm going to give it a 2.
Okay, narrative premise, Neil.
I think there's something here. So I think, a vampire that just causes accidents to feast more on, I think if you overlook the boring facts of this one, and I think you could actually turn it, but you'd have to be causing more accidents, as you say.
Like the film Unbreakable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the secret thing of that. He was actually a vampire. Well, they didn't show the flashback where he's just eating all of those corpses.
They cut that out. Yeah. No, we get more money if it's a 15, so we're going to get rid of all this.
Yeah.
The film was actually 5 hours long.
Oh, that would have been a much
director's cut.
No, that it's not one of my favourites, to be honest with you. It's a dull film. It's I think you could have a bit of fun with this. So, there's not much very vampire about it, but I suppose that's the interesting thing. We've gone in different directions with the vampires. Let's have one that just causes a load of industrial accidents and then feasts on corpses at the end. So yeah, I think
it's like fishing with dynamite.
Yes, exactly. But then people keep covering it up because they're making money out of it. Yeah, I think it could be quite an interesting premise here. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 6.
6. Yeah, I like your premise. I mean, the real story here is how shitty that railway company is, to be honest, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the real story, kind of the story of capitalism, I like to call it.
They never learn. Let's use the tunnel again.
And now, let's do it again.
Still having issues with subsidence.
Loads of people have died. And now the History Channel's coming in and go, let's dig the tunnel out again. It's like human stupidity is a big part of this story.
We want to make a few quid out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess the vampire doing industrial accidents and stuff's all right. I don't know. I'm going to give it a 4-0.
Fair enough.
Reach. So I think it's got a fairly decent reach, as in it's on a lot of listicles, and it's got a Wikipedia page. So that's quite good, isn't it?
Bit on Supernatural, bit on any movies or books?
Doesn't look like it's had any movies or books or anything, so it's not massive. So I don't know that it's had any. Did they say that there was a book written about it? Maybe, but I don't think it's that. It's on a lot of listicles, but I don't think it's. I think it's
more of an internet phenomenon.
Well, yeah, I mean that's how it says pretty much that book mashed the two stories together, the one book about it.
Yeah.
I think it's an internet thing. I think it's a whatever it was, University of the Commonwealth of Virginia thing. I think it's local, so I'm going to give it a 3. Now,
yeah, similar for me. I don't think this has got a lot of reach. Never heard of it.
Hopefully never hear of it again.
No, yeah, it's not, I'm going to forget it fairly soon. Yeah, I can't see it really. It's not a compelling enough kind of thing that it's going to go much further. I don't think. Yeah, you can't see much evidence around elsewhere. So yeah, I might give it a 2 actually.
And that gives us a overall score of 30. So same as last week. So it's there in the gilded company of the Donkey Woman.
Got a bit more variety there.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what's good is we've discovered the most boring vampire story ever.
Yes, that is the most tedious of the vampires.
Most tedious vampire story ever.
I thought Twilight was bad, but I stand corrected. I'm sorry, Stephanie Meyer. Bang up job with what you had.
So if you know any better vampire stories that you'd like us to have a look at, then please contact us at which is urb.legends.podcast@gmail.com. And we will be back, we will be back on New Year's Day with a New Year's special. Also, we've got the mini-series, which is still going out every day. And we'll carry on until the 5th of January, the 12 Legends of Christmas it's called, where every day we do a little half an hour-ish look at different Christmas legends from around the world. So that's on this feed, so you can have a look at that if you've got nothing better to do with your time.
I thought it was Bernard Matthews would have once said about
only under those circumstances.
Yes.
But beyond that, we'll be back on New Year's Day, and then we'll go back to our normal Thursdays. But you know, it's that time of year, so we're doing a lot of shit.
Few extra treats for you.
Few extra treats.
Ain't we kind?
Ruin your Christmas period for you. But yeah, cool. We'll see you New Year's Day, and I hope you're having a nice time, whatever the fuck you're doing. And yeah, see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Antennae. Server. USB. Wi-Fi. Chip and pin. Busy.